Hi, I'm Pete Clark from the Autism Infocast. Today we're looking at being an ally and an advocate for autistic people, which is basically about how you can support your autistic friends or family members or colleagues in the best way possible. This is really important because wanting to help is a great start, but doing it right takes a bit of learning and a lot of listening to make sure we encourage a truly accepting and inclusive world. Have you ever tried to help someone only to realise later that you completely took over and accidentally ignored what they actually wanted? It happens to the best of us, especially when we care a lot. So today we're going to talk about how to avoid that trap when you're supporting autistic people. I'll be sharing exactly what it means to be a true ally, exploring the golden rule of advocacy, and giving you some practical ways to help keep that dignity and respect at the very centre of everything you do. The absolute best place to start is with a golden rule that comes straight from the heart of the disability rights movement. The phrase is, "Nothing about us without us." But what does that actually mean for you? Well, it means that any decisions, discussions, or rules that affect autistic people should always be created in full partnership with them. Ideally, those things should be completely led by them too. Your role as an ally is to recognise that autistic people are the absolute experts on their own lives and experiences. The most crucial part of your job is simply to step back and listen. You aren't there to speak for them, but to respect their views and help amplify their voices where needed so other people can hear them too. So how can you put that into practice every day? Well, first, you need to educate yourself using autistic sources. And while professional books and websites are great and helpful, it's completely essential to learn about autism directly from autistic people themselves. So you should try and find and engage with books, blogs, and social media content created by autistic authors and advocates like myself. This gives you a genuine, authentic insight into their lived experience that a neurotypical person will never fully capture on their own. Neurotypical just means that your brain works in the typical way. The next thing you need to do is to challenge myths and stigma around autism. What should you do when you hear a common stereotype about autism creeping into a conversation? Well, as an informed ally, you're in a great position to gently challenge that bad information. For example, you might hear the old myth that vaccines cause autism, or the completely untrue idea that all autistic people lack empathy. When you hear things like that, you can calmly and respectfully correct them with real facts. See, challenging these stereotypes is a huge help because it creates a much more accurate public understanding and a far less judgmental environment for those people to be in. Another massive part of being an ally is adapting your communication style and being patient. Respecting communication differences is absolutely fundamental. Autistic people often really appreciate clear, direct, literal communication, so you should try to avoid relying on subtle hints, idioms, sarcasm, implied meanings, because those are really confusing. You also need to allow a bit of extra processing time. Just a few seconds when you speak is plenty. Processing time just means giving them a moment to think before they respond. You also need to be comfortable with pauses. Don't try and leap in and ask again, or ask them if they've heard you, or ask them what they're thinking. Give them time to formulate their own response. If you rush them, it just puts them under unnecessary pressure. You also pretty much have to support their autonomy and their personal choices. Autonomy is really just a word for a person's right to make their own decisions about their own life. This comes back to that "nothing about us without us" thing. Showing real respect means you are supporting this right. You need to avoid making assumptions about what a person can or can't do. You always need to support their choices, even if you think it's a bit unwise or you'd personally choose to do something differently. A great rule of thumb is to offer your help without taking over the task completely. You can empower an autistic person by supporting their independence and respecting their preferences, rather than just doing things for them that they're perfectly capable of doing themselves. Now let's talk a little bit about advocacy. When is it actually helpful? When is it actually your place to speak up for someone, and how do you do that the right way? So advocacy is all about supporting a person to have their voice heard when other people aren't listening to them. So it's a very delicate role, and you have to approach it with quite a lot of care. The key difference here is between speaking over someone and speaking up with them. So your role is never to replace their voice with your own, but to turn up the volume on theirs. Advocacy is usually most needed when an autistic person's rights are being ignored for some reason. So, for example, that could happen if their request for reasonable adjustments at work or school is just being dismissed. It's also needed when they specifically asked for your help to communicate their needs in a difficult or stressful situation. But remember, you must always be guided entirely by their wishes. Before you take any action at all, just ask them what they'd like to happen and how they'd like you to help. Your advocacy still must always be led by their own goals. So you should aim to amplify rather than replace. Instead of jumping straight in and saying, "This is what your friend needs," try phrasing it a little differently. You could say something like, "Well, as my friend has already explained, they need the instructions given to them in writing, so how can we make sure that happens?" This keeps the focus right on the autistic person as the true expert. And finally, you need to know when to step back. Sometimes a situation might require a formal, independent advocate, such as a legal professional or a specialist from an autism charity. In those cases, your role as an ally is simply to support the person in accessing that formal help. Being an effective ally and advocate is an ongoing journey of learning and of reflection. It isn't about being a saviour, but actually it's about being a respectful partner. It's about using your position to challenge barriers, to encourage understanding, and to create more accessible spaces. Hopefully, by listening to autistic voices and respecting their autonomy and acting in true partnership, what you're doing is you're making a more equitable and compassionate world where everyone actually gets to be and do exactly who they are and what they need to do. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe now on YouTube and follow Autism Info Centre on social media, or visit autisminfocenter.org on the web for free autism news, articles, books, videos, podcasts, resources and courses. See you in the next video.